Dean Evason, Creed Bratton, guy that it's weird when you have like half the fan base that is like applauding this and half is like pissed off. I'm not sure how to read into some of it. And I mean, we're going to spend a lot of time here on him and Hines, but just your initial thoughts here on Dean Evason, the firing, and just what he did up until that time.
Yeah. I mean, again, we talked about this, I feel like now for a couple of weeks where it's like, is the seat getting hot? Is it hotter? It's continuing to get hot. And then all of a sudden they lose 7 in a row, like what, fucking 14 of 70 or some shit. And it's like the same story every game. And yet we would also come back to eventually, like, at the end of the day, yeah, it's these mistakes that end up a lot of times, unfortunately, being the reason coaches it can. But like, how much of this shit really can we throw on him? And I feel like when this happens and coaches get fired, a lot of times it is like even GMs will come out and say, just like we did not want to do this. Like this, at some point, you only have so many options or like things you can do to try to save a season. And this is like the classic, like rattling the cage, like start up in the locker room, is like waking everyone up and see what the response is. Cause I mean, like in terms of roster moves, can't really make any. Like you have absolutely no room to do anything at all. And it just felt like, I think, and like you said, like when it's half the everyone's saying like, oh, this is a bad thing, like we're all pissed off about it, half the people are applauding, it probably means it's like
reasonable.
So, yeah, it's like that's kind of how I look at it. It's like it sucks that this guy, like, because I do think Dean Evans is a good fucking hockey coach. Like when he came in, they were immediately very good, 100-point seasons. And then you can look at that the first round every year, the same shit, which at that point, are you wondering, hey, well, if this was, if this ended up happening now, like why not after another playoff defeat too? But yeah. I think the bottom line was it just felt like this was the only move they could make right now in this moment to try to save the season. Because like whether or not this team does anything different in the playoffs, I feel like we should all be able to agree that coming into the season, this is a playoff caliber hockey team. Cup contender, no. Should they be making the playoffs and playing way better than this?
Borderline playoff, though?
No, I think they're like, I came in, I was like, I feel like they're the third best team in this division.
That was, in fairness, that was before the extensions in Winnipeg. Like, if you knew that Scheifele and Hellebuck were staying, would you have said that?
Yeah.
Oh, see, I wouldn't have personally, but
yeah.
I did not. Again, that's not to say that I think that they're not a playoff team or that they're like have a dramatically flawed roster. It's just like if I had to bet heavily on them making it or not making it, I don't know what I would have picked coming in.
Right. Yeah.
But it's funny though, because at the end of the playoffs last year, everyone wanted him gone, right? And then we have a horrible season to start and people are like shifting to defending him. Like it's right. Interesting, but I don't know what Dean Evason is as a coach. And to my point, like he did great things. And I think there are really good qualities that he has that aren't even necessarily as much like coaching in my mind. Like he is a good person. He understands the players. He has a pulse on the room. He knows how to get the best out of his guys. I never really saw anything that convinced me that he's like a tactician of a coach.
Right.
And we've seen it, right, with the playoff losses because the other team makes adjustments and he just keeps doing the same thing. Until this year, he hadn't made really much in the way of lineup changes, shuffling lines, players in and out. But I don't know what he is because his good seasons and his bad season were carried by the same thing. Goaltending being incredible or shitty, and having Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Boldy being awesome or shitty. Nothing else is that different. Yeah, the penalty kill's bad. Guess what? The penalty kill was missing Spurgeon. It was missing Evason / Gaudreau. Like, you can make a lot of reasons for that on top of the bad goaltending that the penalty kill was one of the worst in the league. Mm-hmm. It's just hard for me to say confidently, like, I just don't know if he's a good coach. He will absolutely get another chance, and I think he deserves it. I just genuinely don't know if it's going to be like a stealthy, incredible hire, or if it's going to go down as like, oh, no, but never mind. Right. And I wonder, it's kind of funny because like he tries to play the hard ass and the tough guy. He like wants to be buddy with the players. Is he better suited to be an assistant coach for that reason?
Right.
You know what I mean? And we've seen the opposite, right? Like everyone said Rick Tocchet couldn't be a head coach because he is the same way, wants to be buddy, is the guy that gets the best out of the players and can level with them and like lift them up when things are going bad and kind of push them harder when things aren't going good. But that's working for him. So I don't know, maybe Dean can still be a quality NHL head coach, but he got done dirty with just how bad the team played for him. Yes, he could have done things better. Yes, I've been on record saying that the Wild were not going to win a Stanley Cup with him as the head coach. Doesn't mean that I think he deserved to be fired. He's a scapegoat. Everyone said as much. It's just tough. And then, dude, his boy, his son, Freddie Gaudreau, scores a goal the first game after, hadn't scored all year. And apparently he's like texting back and forth with Dean, like, I need to see you. He's like, no, dude, you're good. He's like, no, like, I know you're okay. I'm not okay. I need to see you. Like,
crazy.
Like if Evason gets hired somewhere else, does he immediately like just get traded? To Mateo's point, like, like does he just auto follow?
I will only sign if you also trade for.
Well, also like Dean will demand it to such an extent that Bill Guerin's return is going to be incredible for
it. For McDavid, straight up.
It's part of my signing. Sorry, like he needs to be here.
Right. Yeah.
Now, question though, before we like make the full transition into Hines, and again, like if you have anything else, we can definitely expand. But John Robinson making the point that a lot of people were kind of hitting on yesterday. Very refreshing to see 97, 23, 36 get to play with Faber and Brodin. John, I want to know why you listed all the forwards as numbers and all the defensemen as their name, but we'll cover that later. Who would have thunk it would help with O-zone top end play and D-zone breakouts? Who knew talent benefits talent? Like, do you see it being as simple as Dean just like ignored or didn't want to make extra adjustments to make that happen? Or is this just, yeah, we got lucky in one game where everyone was buzzing because the coach just got canned?
Well, so, and this goes to the point of like, all right, how many bullets in the chamber does Guerin actually have at this point right here in the season to save it? Like, obviously, what does everyone say when like a coach gets fired? Probably a bit unfairly at this point of the season. It's like, all right, well, like fire into the ass, like whatever, like wake the fucking room up, like, oh shit, where it's all of a sudden like you knew they were going to come out fucking like whether or not they were playing well, it's like a whole other thing, but they were going to be flying. And like you knew they were going to come out hard. Again, we've seen this with them specifically in the playoffs, the whole grit first bullshit where it's like, hey, they might actually just end up taking even more penalties. I don't know, but you knew they were going to come out fucking flying. And I do think it's like to that point, like that was a little small adjustment that like looked to make quite the difference immediately. Like, and this goes back to this is what I was going to say when you were talking about like, is he a tactician, Dean Evason? Or like how much of the X's and O's, like how much do we really know about him? I feel like a lot of it is the fact that he was a pretty big rah-rah guy. And like he at that, like that team, especially when they brought in the like types of players that feed off that energy, like They were a tough team to play against, and he had them running through a fucking wall for him. And like, let's face it, like you look at, that Winnipeg game where they were down, was it 2 years ago? They come back late.
Wrong. Never mind. Sorry, I thought you were talking about a different one.
No, the Winnipeg game a couple years ago, they're down late. Yeah. A couple of years ago, they're down 2-3 goals late, come back tied up, win an OT, whatever. Like a lot of those goals are coming from like that fucking grief line shit, just running people, and just like a lot of those times that they were winning games, like a big shift in momentum of the game was just the grief line going out there and just burying guys. But then you look, also think that like, so now then this year, when like it's not really happening anymore, where like they're very reactionary. We've talked about like at some point the penalty kill is like someone just gonna fucking like block a shot. Is someone just gonna make one play and get the fucking puck out? At some point, if you're a rah-rah guy, unless on the X's and O side, like when that stops working, it looks bad. And like, all right, are they not responding to it as much anymore, which tends to happen with a lack of like playoff success, I feel like too. So at that point, it's like, all right, well, like you said, what is he as a coach? I don't really, who knows? But I do think Hines has, and this is what I texted you, what's that last night? I don't know. Time's a flat circle. Couldn't tell you. But it was like, it feels like a bit of a lateral move. Like, obviously Hines has his moments each time he goes to the team where there's like either one season of pretty good hockey or it's a mediocre year overall, but like that team will have spurts throughout the year where they look phenomenal. I think he's a fine coach. I still think it's somewhat of a lateral move, but it sounds like they're really, I mean, if they weren't interested in him long term, they would have just like had Darby Hendrickson probably step in as an interim. Which, by the way, how do you think he feels? I think he's probably sad. He's probably sad, but he must feel light. He's
I don't know, dude. His tummy is feeling great these days. And the second you posted that, I was just like, God damn it. Yep. Like I was saying it, but you had the perfect way to just like, you took the video of the celebration on the bench after the win. You're like,
so weird.
This is going to be an adjustment.
This is going to take a whole lot of getting used to because, well, and how they're playing. We won't really have to see it a whole lot anyways. Bang, got it. Because there's not going to be a whole lot of post-game win tellys.